Hello there. So what's this latest wheeze to surface in our government's overzealous race to net zero? The government is going to change the planning laws so that loads of pylons carrying miles of overhead cabling can be erected at the rush, all to power our new electric-only power system. And the government knows that people will object to them, so they want to make it far easier to get around those objections. But people will object, and some may take a stand and try to physically block their construction. And presumably anyone who does get in the way will not get the kid glove treatment that the Just Stop Oil types have been receiving. But if we've been heading for net zero all this time, why has the government only got around to thinking about this now? If we are to drop coal, oil and gas, then it's not rocket science to work out that we need to replace the lost energy in the form of electricity and make it available in every nook and cranny in the land. And the chief exec of the National Grid, John Pettigrew, told the Telegraph that when 2035 comes around and the sale of new diesel and petrol cars as well as hybrid cars are banned, then the grid will need 50% more capacity. So all this means pylons everywhere. Wonder what that'll do to the environment. So we'll be cluttering up the environment with pylons and cables in order to save the environment. There soon won't be much room for anything but solar panels, wind turbines and pylons. Now this is coming out of the Department for Energy Security and Net Zero, DESNZ, run by Grant Shapps. But the cigar-chomping Environment Secretary, Therese Coffey, doesn't seem enamoured with that particular idea. She's organised a petition against plans for a 112-mile-long set of pylons to carve through Norfolk, Suffolk and the Essex countryside to provide power from a North Sea offshore wind farm. Doesn't she want electricity for her own government's grand net zero plans? But the way this government is operating, we're going to get net zero all right. Net zero electricity. Anyway, Therese Coffey, who is the MP for Suffolk Coastal, has been joined in the petition by 6 other MPs, including Kemi Badenoch, the Business Secretary. And they want the cables from the wind farms to come ashore in Kent. But Grant Shapps wants to do it the quickest way, even if it means digging up and spoiling the countryside. So I fear we're going to see these things going up everywhere. And when the great 2050 net zero arrives, we'll have to be generating something like 4 times plus the amount of electricity we generate today to keep society functioning as it does. If having it function as it does today is the plan, which I very much doubt. How many more pylons would that take? And in October last year it came to light that National Grid was, wait for it, pulling down 22 pylons and the overhead cabling in order to remove any obstructions to the natural views of an area of outstanding natural beauty in Dorset. Talk about joined up thinking. At least they've put the cables underground now. But I wonder if they have the capacity to cover the projected increasing load until 2050. Or will more pylons have to go up under relaxed planning laws? Am I the only one thinking that the government is running this whole thing from the back of a cigarette packet? Is it just me, or is there a massive disconnect between ministers' grand plans and statements and then converting it into a well thought through and achievable programme? Or are we just witnessing a government thrashing about from day to day in the hope that something will turn up? A government continually buying net zero scratch cards with our money in the hope of a win. And if they're as effective at this as they aren't in stopping the boats, then we're in real trouble. It's looking more and more like a WEF dream come true. Not enough electricity around the country, so forcing people to start moving into the cities more and more, you know, the 15-minute neighbourhoods and the like, while the price of electric vehicles stays elevated beyond the means of ordinary people. Meanwhile, in China, hundreds if not thousands of electric cars are being left in fields to rot. Yes, I just watched a YouTube vid by Serpenza showing fields of these things just waiting to fall apart, rot and then leach all those chemicals into the ground. And all those vehicles, it seems, are registered and ready to drive, so they appear on all the Chinese statistics for cars manufactured and sold. And the video also shows the same thing happening to bicycles, millions of them stacked up to rot away. All because the manufacturers get a big subsidy to make them. Why is it, whenever you hear about anything to do with net zero, there has to be a subsidy involved, or it won't get done? Could it be these plans are not as cheap as we're told? Well, they're not going to be when the tax that coal, oil, gas and petrol and diesel supplies all dries up. That tax revenue will have to be replaced. There's no getting away from that. Unless the government slims down hugely. As if. And just in case you don't know, there is a green non-regression clause in the Brexit Trade and Cooperation Agreement we have with the EU. Article 391 Part 2 says, "A party shall not weaken or reduce, in a manner affecting trade or investment between the parties, its environmental levels of protection or its climate level of protection below the levels that are in place at the end of the transition period, including by failing to effectively enforce its environmental law or climate level of protection." With environmental protection being about pollution and climate protection referring to greenhouse gases. And that means it's locked into both international and domestic law. But I gather that we in the UK are only going to achieve 92% of the emissions cuts required. No wonder Shaps is in such a hurry. And the EU has an overall rating of insufficient as of the 8th of June on the Independent Climate Action Tracker. It looks like our politicians, probably egged on by their respective advisers, generated a race between the EU and the UK, all forced by law. They fired the starting gun, and it looks like no one on either side had a real clue about the scale of what to do. I say it looks like that, because I suspect their desired WEF-driven outcome is poles apart from the one they're trying to sell to us. And nothing I've seen so far would ever convince me that our political masters want anything other than people stuck in a continual net zero rut, all governed by a central bank digital currency where your choices of purchase can be limited by the state. We need to stop this madness.